Thank you, everyone. I'd like to thank Red Cloud for hosting us, and nice to meet a lot of new faces. I've just come in from Australia a couple of days ago, so okay, so let's talk about Aston. So I was introduced to this project in March this year. I attended PDAC, and Evan Cranston, big shareholder of Patriot, and Tolga come over, who was the chairman of this company, and Dale Ginn, who probably a lot of you know, did a lot of drilling, raised $25 million last year through flow-through, did 28,000 meters of drilling on the property. Very similar style property to what we just heard about Canada Nickel. It's low grade, it's big bulk tonnage. I'll get onto my experience just now, but my previous life, I'm a nickel guy as well. So we got introduced to this project. It got to a point where the guys had drilled it. They needed project developers, guys who have built mines, run mines, and that's exactly what we do, and we'll get into a bit of that just now. So there's the disclaimer. What happened? Sorry, I just want to. What do you? How do you go back? There you go. So what we said is we'll do our DD. So we did a DD exercise in April. These are the high level, and I mean, you guys will get all of this being in Canada. This, I have to talk in Australia to people about this, right? And in our DD exercise, we said, look, we've got a maiden resource, it's JORC compliant, 28,000 meters of drilling done on the property. We said it's in Canada, and we all know how vocal Canada has been with regards to promoting critical mineral supply. We think it's a good place to operate. Everyone gets mining here, so we've worked in some pretty remote places, and Canada's not one of them, so we're quite happy to be here. We think, you know, we've got good agreements in place with our First Nation groups on the property. We've got 2 First Nation groups on the property, and they've endorsed the project, and we think that's important. You know, that's a big part of our project development, what we do. We have the problem child. We've got the 1.5 million ounce gold deposit north of where our nickel is, and that's how Dale found the nickel. He was drilling for gold. We're on that Kirkenlade fault, and he found the gold, drilled, and then stepped over the fault and found the nickel, and then went south. And you'll see just now that's where we found the boomerang. So we've got a gold property as well that, you know, we could look at monetizing, and I'll get a bit into the gold just now. And then we said, look, we'll restructure the management. Dale stepped down. I came on as MD. Peter Breeze, who some of you may know, has been... There you go. So that's the management team. Peter Breeze, myself, I'm MD. Peter's the chairman. Hugo, Malcolm, Rob, we've worked together for 25 years. Cole's our ops manager here in Canada, and we've got Rob as well, who looks after our community liaison and First Nation work stream. Tolga and Rob are also on the board. What's significant about this team, and I guess this is a big part of what the message I wanted to get across. I think there's a few of you in this room may know us from our past lives. We were all the Lion Ore team. We were the executive of Lion Ore. So we did 85,000 tons of nickel a year, and we sold to Norilsk for $7 billion. So we had mines in Australia, Botswana. I ran the big mine in Botswana, which is now the premium nickel, which is listed here in the Salibi mines. So I was there for 10 years, and we had Tati in Botswana, and we had Unkamati in South Africa. So we ran that, and I was part of that company from the early 90s right through to when we sold to Norilsk. And then that same group of people, we then moved on, and we then developed the uranium project in Tanzania, which was TSX listed. We sold to Uranium One here in town for $1 billion. And then after that, that same group of people, we put together a gold mine in Ghana, which Gold Fields bought 50% of. So, and that's a 240,000 ounce gold mine, which we started in 2012, and it's still running today. So I'm just trying to make the point that, and this little jigsaw thing here, I make the point because we're miners, right? We're not promoters, and we're developers, and we know what needs to be done. And I think that's important when we talk about raising funds, the work you need to do, where the money's going to be allocated. It's one thing that we understand, and we like to try and just get that message across that shareholders' money, we want to make sure that it gets spent in the right place. It was a very interesting dynamic when we came on board. Tolga and a few of our significant shareholders thought we had the magic wand and we were just going to get this thing rock and rolling and have a mine built in 2 years. Well, there's quite a bit of work that you need to do, and that jigsaw just talks about that work. And those things you see on the left-hand side, those mines, so that one you see there at the top, that's Tati Nickel. That was a 12 million ton a year nickel mine, which was running at 0.21 nickel. We did 18,000 tons of nickel out of that mine. We were one of the lowest cash cost mines in the world when that was running. But it didn't start that way, right? It started off as a 2,000 ton mine. So, you know, these things take time. And I just think it's important that as investors and even ourselves that we just got to do the work and get to the point. But I guess that's, you know, you take a company like Lionel, which was a 50-cent stock and was sold for $27 10 years later. So Mantra was a 20-cent stock and it went for $7. So that this slide to me is quite important, and the team that's on board, we just like to get that message through to people that despite our past successes, and there's a lot of luck involved in that, we all know that, right? It's timing, okay? But we just, there's work to be done. They're the companies we're using. They're all Canadian. So I know David's in the room now. Core Explore, they've done a great job. We've got Corum doing the work. Same laboratories that Canada Nickel have done. I think Canada Nickel have done an excellent job, and we're learning from what they've done in their project as well. We're neighbours. We're right next door to each other, so there's a lot of synergies in the engineering and the technical work that Canada Nickel have come up with. We're in the very same region. We're just south of Timmins. I'm sure most people in this room know where we are. Hydropower, road, rail. So we're in a good part. It's interesting, when we went to site, myself and Peter, we drove from Timmins in a car on a double-lane dirt road, got to site within 35 minutes, and we said, well, normally we're trying to find where we can build a landing strip and where we're going to build the camp. And so all those infrastructure things, we got a real good appreciation for that address in Timmins. It does support those large-scale mines that are in that area. So I think we're in a good address, and obviously that'll help with capital. Look, this is, everyone knows that, you know, we've spoken about the activity corporately, what's going on, and I think you're going to see this, that the majors and the car manufacturers and the battery, they're going to be looking at projects like this and supporting and taking a stake, and Canada Nickel's no exception. And I think as we get through our work, you know, sooner or later someone will say we will want to take a stake in this type of company, because there is nickel to be had here, and there is a team that's done this before. So, and you're seeing a lot of that, BHP, Wyloo, Anglo-American, and you know, and I think this is the kind of space that we'd like to find ourselves in. And then just bringing that home, what's happening in Canada, you know, you guys understand that, you know, the government policies. You're seeing, you know, car manufacturers, battery suppliers coming into Canada. And we as a group talk about this, and we kind of want to get to a point where we can demonstrate technically that there's a mine here. And then, you know, I think the big question for these type of projects is, well, where does that nickel go? I don't think nickel from these type of assets, 40, 50-year life of mines, is going to go in a bag and go off to a flash furnace. That's my view. I think there's a bigger strategic question, and being in Canada, I think that question will be asked as well. So I don't need to get into the demand and supply. Quickly on the asset, so the Edelston and Siroli, you see, that's the gold. And then you've got the boomerang, that's the nickel, and that's how Dale found the deposit, the nickel deposit. We'll quickly get into a bit of detail on the nickel. There's two sections. There's the B2 zone at the top of the boomerang, and then there's the Bardwell zone. You can see there's a lot more drilling being done on Bardwell, and I'll get onto that just now. When we came on board, there was two things we wanted to do. We wanted to understand the extension of B2, so we put a program together, we popped some holes, and we extended that B2 zone by 500 meters. Then we said, let's stop. We know there's nickel there. It has extended at depth and at strike, and that was announced about 2 months ago on the ASX. So we know we've got a couple 100,000 tons of nickel up in the B2 region. Then what we've recently done, we announced about 2 months ago, we were going to Bardwell. So Dave and his team went down there and we did short hole extension drilling. So essentially what we're doing is bringing the resource up to surface. And we've actually just completed that right now. So this weekend the rig stopped and we hit nickel right through the 10 holes that we put in. So we expected that. All that core will go off for assay, and we'll get those assays back by the end of the year. Then what we'll do is rerun the block model. Then what we'll do is start to then understand exactly where the pit is. I'll get back to when we came on board, there was a big perception that we could start a scoping study straight away, and we said no. What we want to do is do some targeting drilling. We've got a bit of flow sheet development work to do to carry on from what was done in the past, and I'll get onto that just now. All of that can feed into a modifying factor model in terms of pit design. We've got that model designed already, so now we're inputting, different parameters, including when we get all the assays back from this recent drilling we've done, and then we'll start to understand the positioning of the pit. Once we've got that, with the flow sheet development we're doing as well, we'll be able to understand what this mine looks like. And then we'll get into a scoping study. So that's kind of the flow of work next year. That was an announcement we made. That's the extension of B2 at the top there. That was a 500-meter extension. We know there's nickel there, very similar grades to what we see in the Bardwell. So we said, that's fine, that objective's been made. Let's stop now, we'll leave that. And then what we did, we went into B2, and you can see there those 10 holes. The short hole that we've done, and we've completed that now. Core Explore and Dave and his team have done a good job there. Actually much quicker than what we expected, so well done, Dave. And we've now waiting for those assays, but I think it's fair to say you can see those higher grade zones, and you can see the formation of a pit there. So once we've got those assays, we've lifted that resource up to surface. That's where the pit will be. Once we know that, we can start rerunning the block model. We can start then looking at sensitivities on this pit. And that model's waiting. We've already designed it and developed it. So we'll wait for the assays, and then we'll start to run these different scenarios where we look with how big, how wide, how deep this pit will be. And that'll be our starter pit, and that'll be in Bardwell. I think you're probably looking at, well, you're looking at 12 to 15 years of nickel there. It's 2 kilometer strike, 450 deep, nice big pit. And it'll be this bulk mining scenario where you'll just go in, low strip ratio and low mining cost and bring it up to surface. There you go. I'll just skip through that. They're just some higher grade zones that we've seen. You get onto processing. Well, our ore body is just nickel sulfide, so we don't have any chrome, we don't have any iron. I've not even thought about capturing CO2. That's a million miles away from where we are at the moment. We're doing all the flow sheet development out at Coram, and we're using XPS as well in Sudbury. XPS did all our original work. Coram now, so we've got 2 labs doing it. And we often do that. When we did our uranium project, we had 2 labs running. They get to different answers, but very same, and that's what we'll go to achieve here. So we have 2 looks at it. It'll be crush mill float. It's a sulfide ore body. It can't do anything else, to be honest with you. So there's no leach. Once we get a concentrate, then I think the question is, And with my flash furnace hat on, I say, well, does this nickel go into a flash furnace? I don't think so. I honestly don't. I mean, you've heard Canada Nickel, they're right next door. I think there's a fantastic opportunity that Canada can create another Sudbury, to be honest with you. Maybe different nickel, but there's two big assets there. Why would you put it in bags and go and get 70% offtake? I think that's a waste. You know, it's something that you could put a refinery in Timmins here and have yourself a big nickel business. And that's, look, that's my view. So we're doing the work. I mean, this gentleman over here mentioned about the mineralization. It's all about the mineral, right? And that's what we're trying to understand now. We're creating these metallurgical composites, and they're running through a flow sheet. It's a mill flow concept. So it's nothing that we've not done before. It's just typical nickel sulfide metallurgy flow sheet development. You do produce these high-grade concentrates because of the mineralization, your millerite, hazelwoodite, pentlandite. Sometimes it's difficult to actually play around with the grade recovery curve, the concentrate grade recovery curve, because it's the mineral that's creating such a high grade. So you ain't going to pull a higher mass to get high recovery. It's not, you're not going to gain anything. It is what it is. We're trying to understand that now, and that's all the work that we're doing at the moment. It's very important work, but essentially we're feeding that into the geomet model. You get that geomet model right, you understand, you cut the domains, and that's what we'll be doing once we get the assays back from this recent drilling. And then we'll be able to not only then create a new drilling program for next year, but we'll understand where this mine's going to start, where the sweet spots are, what the response is, and it's a function of mineralogy. So we're doing that work now, and it does take a bit of time. It's interesting work, but it's incredibly important work. Once we get this right, then it's game on. And all the projects that we've done, this is just exactly how we go about doing it. You've got to understand your mineralogy. If you don't, you'll get it wrong, without a doubt. So that's the property in its entirety. So the gold's in the north, and I'll touch on the gold now. I know we're kind of running out of time, and there you can see the boomerang. So the drilling's finished for the year. We're doing the met work. We're looking at a few other little other things, but we've built the model for the pit. Once we've got those assays, we'll then start feeding those in and rerun the block model. I did touch on this. That was in June. There's Stan and Tim. I'll be meeting them again tomorrow. I'm going up to site tomorrow with Rob and Peter, the chairman. We've got 2 First Nation groups on our property. Both have endorsed the project, and they've given us statements to that. And I actually announced that on the ASX in June. And I'll be meeting the new chief, Jennifer, on Thursday in that area. So and, you know, we've worked in all different places around the world, and I think it's one thing that when I met Stan and Tim, I said to them, those guys there, that team that I introduced you to, that said we'll build a mine here tomorrow, right? That's just bread and butter for us. That we've got the script, but we haven't got a clue how to build a mine in your backyard. So you're going to have to help us, because it's different, right? It's not Tanzania, it's not Botswana, it's not Australia. This is Canada, and they were very receptive to that. And they, you know, and I said that's what we'll have to do together. This is going to be a big business thing, so we've all got to be hands on deck. So you know, I think we've got a good relationship, but you know, you've got to keep that and maintain that. And I think that's through integration and communication, and just, you know, eventually creating this team that just pushes this thing through. I won't touch on I bring this up in Australia. This is the critical minerals policy. I think the Canadian government have done a very good job defining exactly what it is. In Australia, we've got a similar thing. But what I've said to the guys, those 5 points that you see there in the critical minerals policy, they are essentially the guidelines that the government are saying, if you want to create one of these projects, you have to follow these principles. And it's about diversification, inclusion, those type of things. So we're very conscious of that, and we'll make sure any documentation that comes out from this project will be used around those guidelines that have come from the Canadian government. This is one of these remotes you want to throw, isn't it? Sorry. So it's like at home, just change the batteries, kids. So just touch on the gold. We do have gold. It's 1.5 million ounces. I announced about 6 weeks ago, we've selected core from the main zone. That's all in the laboratory at the moment. We'll be doing bottle roll tests on that. We've got 1.5 million ounces. I think that's a conversation, but can you recover it? We don't know yet, right? So for $40,000, which is nothing, we're doing these tests, and I think it's a very different conversation when you say, I've got 1.5 million ounces, and I recover this gold after 12 hours, and 95% dissolution rate. So we'll be doing, that is being done now, so hopefully by the end of the year, we'll get those numbers back. We'll put that on the gold package, and if the price of gold goes to $5,000 an ounce, which I heard someone mention at lunchtime, well, let's worry about the nickel later, right? But, but at the moment now, we came on board to develop this nickel. But don't forget, the last thing we did was build a gold mine in Ghana, a 5 million ton a year gold mine, 240,000 ounce. So we know gold, right? But I think, honestly, and this is my view, is there an opportunity to monetize this? I think there definitely is. And that's why doing this basic met work could be non-dilutive, you know, bring money into the project and help with the nickel story. So that's where the gold is. It's a nice little number, and I'll take guidance from Dale. Dale's got some few ideas, and then we'll see where we get with the gold. But yeah, look, it's this. You're right on the Kirkland-Larder fault there, so you're in the right address. So we're going to drill, we're going to find gold, right? And in summary, in conclusion, sorry, I'm just trying to go back, and I can't, so, but all of those points that we mentioned, you know, we've got the resource, you've got a team that's got credibility, we've done nickel before, we understand gold, we're in Canada, we've got good First Nation relationship, and you know, I heard the Canada Nickel presentation, just get an appreciation of all those matrix and the work that they've done to get to that point. And you know, we're at early stage, but you know, we will be at that point, and I think we'll go through a very similar journey. So we look forward to it. We're looking forward to working in Canada. I've met some great people here, and it's a bit colder than Perth, but we'll have to invest in a jacket. I've been told it's time. So thank you very much.